Denise England, Tulare County Water Resources Director, and my job duties are really to be the liaison between the Tulare County Board of Supervisors and all things water. California is kind of unique because of the way our groundwater laws play out. If you overlay groundwater, you have the right to extract it. That's not the case in other states. Some other states, those rights belong to the state. Those rights belong to some sort of municipality. And so that creates a unique complexity in California, because once we do start restricting groundwater, if we restrict it in a way that the courts deem unfair, then we could be taking a property right, and then that just sets us up for lawsuits. So I would say in California it's been pretty unique. I went to Denmark I was invited to go to Denmark by the Danish government to see how they implemented their version of SIGMA. But their climate is much different than ours. They're a tiny, tiny island. They have all of this really great density. They do a really great job of like the gray water thing. And their industry is lined up to where, this guy has the cleanest gray water, and then this guy can use it, and then this guy can use it. And then, we just don't have that here. We just don't have that density here. But then they also get tons of rain. And so their problem more is water quality with stormwater runoff, and how to capture that water so it doesn't create damage, and then how to get it out into the harbor and so it doesn't kill fish. But they had some pretty good technologies along the way. They have really great data management systems. They have some really great modeling that we don't have here that's been helpful. And then in the adjudicated process, we have a lot of subbasins, especially in Southern California, that have been adjudicated. So we can kind of see how that played out as well. But I don't think that any one of those is a direct cookie cutter to what we're going to face now. So you kind of have to pull a little bit from here and pull a little bit from there, and kind of marry it together to actually know to attack what we're doing now. The challenge comes is that in Tulare County, because we are so rural, we have a hard time attracting new business as it is. And so typically we're already incentivizing folks to even come. Like we tried to get an Amazon distribution center. And so we were like, hey, we are going to roll out the red carpet for you, and we're going to do some things with the fees, and we're going to try to streamline your environmental review process. And we're really good at getting things moved through. And so when you've already incentivized folks to come here and build a business, it's hard to incentivize more to do further reduction. A lot of businesses, though, take it upon themselves to do gray water recycling or reduction and do water conservation type things. I would say one of the biggest challenges, especially for like gray water reuse, is just density. We just don't have the densities of a large municipal region. And so one house, for them to try to install a gray water system, it just doesn't make a lot of financial sense. And especially if you have a home that's also on a septic system, so they're not a sewered house, if you take the water out of your, this is like getting way out into the weeds, but if you take the water out of your wastewater system, that changes the chemical balance of your wastewater. And so now you've got a septic and it's all full of solids. Well, a septic tank doesn't work that way. So it would not only require install a gray water system, it would require that you do something with the septic system, both being very expensive. And we have some of the most disadvantaged residents in the state. How do you expect them to pay for all of that? And we don't have, aside from packing houses that operate seasonally, we don't have a lot of large-scale water intensive industry in the unincorporated county. A lot of that industrial side of that is in the cities. We do have agriculture that uses the water to grow food, but they're pretty efficient as it is, and they're going to get more efficient as they enter into SIGMA. I live in Tulare, which is like the heart of the dairy region, and it seems like almost every week you hear of somebody that's sold out to a larger dairy, or is sold out completely, or has taken their dairy out of state. And we have, it's not just the dairies that feed the economy, it's all of the business that goes along with the dairies. And so it is a big part of Tulare County. We've done a lot to do environmental permitting. We've done a big environmental document for dairies under the Dairy Cares program that sort of helps streamline and cite dairies to be in compliance environmentally. But, you know, especially with Sigma, dairies are huge water users. They reuse the water. You know, they pump the water. It goes into their, when they wash the cow's udders before milking, and then they reclaim that water and they wash out their feed lanes, and then it kind of flushes their pens, and then it goes to a pond, and then that pond water gets pumped back out into their crops. So they use it a lot, but it's still pretty water intensive. You wouldn't have a milk processing plant if you don't have a dairy there to bring you the milk. Although if the dairy it's getting sold to goes to the same milk processing plant, then okay. But sometimes they're going to another county, and that dairy has a contract with a different plant. So it can all be, you know, it all sort of has a trickle-down effect. And the bigs can only get to be so big, too, because you only have so much land area. So Sigma is like trying to fly an airplane as you're putting it together. So there have been a lot of challenges. The first challenge we had locally was just sort of herding all of the cats and helping them go in the same direction and helping them understand how they could take a regional approach, how they could work with others, and what benefit that was to them. So I spent a significant amount of time meeting with folks and saying, okay, I understand that you want to be in charge of your future, that you want to have control over your destiny. We want that too, and this other agency over here wants that too. But you also want it to be affordable. And so here are the things that the county could offer up to, because we had a significant amount of white area. That's an area that isn't covered by any other public district that the county was going to have to cover. And the county didn't want to do a standalone GSA to cover those areas. It would have been really expensive. We're not good at that. We're not the experts. And so we wanted to partner with others. So we sort of had to do a sales pitch of, you know, and here's what we bring to the table. We could house your executive director, and we could provide county benefits and offer that service. They'd have a retirement, they'd have vacation time, they'd have, you know, they'd be part of a larger system. It'd be more affordable to you. We have code compliance officers, so we could contract those to you to go out and do the actual enforcement action. So it's not you, irrigation district, going to your customers. It'd be the big bad county, and we can do that. And so that was the first challenge, and that was a big challenge. But the deadline came last summer, and we managed to get everybody covered, and we have some pretty good sized GSAs. Some chose to continue to stand alone. The next challenge is agreeing on the components that go into everybody's groundwater sustainability plan. So folks have a very different view of how surface water and groundwater should be counted in Sigma. And so trying to get folks, and you're dealing mostly with irrigation districts that are 100% surface water. So they have this mentality of the water comes out of the mountains in snow melt, it gets put into a river system, it gets into a canal system, and it comes to me and we deliver it. And we know exactly how much we're getting every year, and we know exactly who is supposed to get it. The groundwater is a lot more nebulous. And recharge is happening. Where is it happening from? There's channel loss. So does that get credited back to the surface water agencies? What is the pure number of just groundwater that's getting recharged out of the mountains? And then how does that get allocated? So that's our challenge right now, is to helping them wrap their heads around this more nebulous groundwater concept and not trying to get all of the interactions between surface water and groundwater perfectly perfect. And recognizing that even if we get it perfectly perfect, we're most likely not going to require our extractors day one, you know, January 2020, okay, now you were pumping this and this is the sustainable yield, so now you have to pump that. No, it's going to be like a ratchet down over time to get to that sustainable level. And during that 20-year timeline, we're going to be learning a lot more about how all these things interact. So that's our current challenge. And then in the future, it'll be, you know, projects, and how do we pay for them, and how do we build them, and how do we get them through the California's environmental process in a timely fashion, so that we start a project here, and in 20 years we actually have that project in place, and it's providing the recharge we expected it to provide, and we're meeting our Sigma goals. having the state pay for and install and they even engineered a piece of it, the East Porterville solution. I would say that was very successful. And I would say that was a model we were pursuing even before East Porterville came along. We have so many other communities that would benefit from a similar project. We had a really hard time convincing folks at the state that they should pay for a regionalization project because a lot of our communities are just like East Porterville and some even worse off economically, and so they're disadvantaged or they're severely disadvantaged. And we have folks paying some of the highest water rates in the state. We have a small community in northern Tulare County that pays $60 a month just for their water service, and they can't drink it. They've been on a boil water notice for the past 9 years because the system was a privately owned system and the owner passed away. So the county was appointed receiver by the courts, and then we went to work to try to get money to install a new water distribution system because their pipes were so leaky, so they have bacteria issues. And we just opened bids for that project, and it should start this summer. So that took 9 years to get water to this community. And the long-term project is to tie them into another community nearby, but that connection goes through tiger salamander habitat, and so now we've had to add 2 more years of environmental review and mitigation to even connect them. So you've got all these conflicting requirements and laws and things in California that it just makes it a lot more difficult. And then you have folks that hold the purse strings in Sacramento and convincing them that this is a good project and that this provides safe drinking water. Hopefully it'll be affordable when they get their new system to these residents. And so East Porterville was, a model that we'd been trying to implement on a smaller scale, and so having the larger scale project, it was a little bit frustrating, I'll admit, because here we've been trying to get all these other communities intertied, and all of a sudden the state comes in, and because the media is going crazy about these folks in East Porterville that have had no water for 3 months, and I'm like, okay, the people in Seville haven't been able to drink their water in 5 years, but okay, we're going to go tackle this really expensive, really hard problem first. That was a little bit hard, especially when you have relationships with the people in the other communities. And then just to illustrate the complexity of these things, is you get this water system built, and now for the first time, they've from what we understand of East Porterville, probably every summer their wells were going dry for a period of time, but then they would just sort of suffer through and then come back online when the rain started again. So now you've had these folks that have had intermittent water outages and then a full-on water outage for a period of probably close to 2 years. And then we had a wet year and they were like, oh, we don't want to connect. There's just like this people factor that you can't, you can build a water system, but you can't force them to connect. And so I think we were able to get, through significant outreach and convincing, get them to connect. But there's still other folks out there that won't. In the summer, their well will probably go dry, and I don't know what they're going to do. Well, I think if the state could provide, and they have done some, but if they could provide grants, and it's not just necessarily the grant to start the system. I mean, obviously that's expensive too, but a lot of times the systems require ongoing maintenance and upkeep, and that gets expensive too. And so ongoing dollars that could be funded for that. If this truly is the state's goal to have the most efficient wastewater and drinking water systems, in the nation, then they got to put their money where the mouth is and help folks that can't afford the basic, water bill. And now you're asking them to do something on top of that. They're going to need some help. So there are significant amounts of programs that fund water and wastewater projects. I would say there's still a gap. There's a gap with private domestic wells. You don't necessarily, they were eligible under the drought. We had 2 specific communities that were on private wells that we had been trying to do something for a period of time, and they weren't eligible for any public funding source because they weren't a water system. They were viewed as individual private well owners, and you don't use public money for private enterprise. And so, but with the drought, and Eastport at that time wasn't even on the map. But with the drought, it opened up opportunities to get those folks off of a private well system and into a municipal well system of some sort, or water system of some sort. And so that's an important step. And we viewed all of our emergency drought projects with a longer view. Like, okay, what can we get done with the temporary emergency funding that's available that actually paves the way to a longer term, more sustainable project? Because currently there's legislation up in Sacramento that says you can't create a new water system. Well, if we weren't able to create a new water system, there's 80 homes in Munson and another 85 homes in Okieville that would currently still be on a private domestic well. And so you have to be able to move folks along that continuum. So maybe a small water system with only 80 connections, maybe that isn't truly sustainable. It's not the best, but it certainly is better than a bunch of private wells. And then there's another project that moves them into a regional program where they're connected with another community. And then maybe that gets fed into an even larger regional program where they're connected with 7 communities. And so having funding that allows for that is really important. There's also the issue of ongoing operation and maintenance. So a lot of other utilities, electricity, gas, phone service, internet, have what's called a lifeline rate. And all of us that have phone service or get electricity, we pay a little $1.50 or whatever it is a month on our bill, and that goes into a pot of money, and then that gets fed back out to folks that qualify for the lifeline rates. A similar program is being pursued for the water side, and I think that's really important. The state has said every Californian has the human right to water, and it's now time for us to put our money where our mouths are and pay for that. And so there's a piece that agriculture will pay for through a fertilizer tax, and then there's a piece that other municipal water users will pay through a fee on their water bill, just as we do for our other utilities. And that goes into a fund, and then it gets fed back out. And that over time will reduce the need for these long, huge, really expensive capital improvement projects, because if folks are able to maintain those water systems and make those repairs as they're needed and upgrade their equipment as it needs to be upgraded, it doesn't snowball into this huge, giant, expensive project that requires state grant money. And so those are the things that I think are needed, and those are the things that are moving, and keeping that flexibility to move folks along the continuum of least sustainable, most susceptible to impacts to something better is important as well.